Let's go to my good friend, Sheriff David A. Clarke. He was the former sheriff of Milwaukee County, and he's now a senior policy advisor to America First Policies. I saw him a couple weeks ago in Des Moines. I had the opportunity to introduce his rousing speech in Iowa. Sheriff Clarke, great to have you with us, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be on with you, and hello to your listeners.
Okay, Sheriff, let's go to the president calling for the release of the FISA application to the FISA judge in order to put surveillance on an American citizen who was volunteering. He was not paid staff. He was just a volunteer for the Trump campaign. And the president says, look, let's get this out. Let's see what it is. Let's declassify it. There's nothing in there that's going to compromise intel gathering the way the Democrats are saying. What do you think of this move?
First of all, the Democrats are crying wolf. President Trump obviously has the authority to do this. He knows what he's doing. He's working this to precision, very methodically. I think it should be done for another reason. The American people need to know, and we get to weigh in. Whether Eric Holder and some of the other Democrats saying that it was an abuse of power and would threaten national security is crying wolf. That's all it is. It's sky is falling rhetoric. There's nothing in the documents that are going to be released that will threaten national security. The only threat to national security here is that high-ranking officials in the Justice Department, that includes the FBI, colluded to nullify an election to prevent President Trump from becoming the 45th president of the United States. We already know most of what happened. It came out in drip, drip, drip fashion with the release of text, the release of other information involved with these characters, if you will, who were part of the deep state. So I applaud the president. And here's another thing. This whole classification system, by the way, I'm very well versed on this. I have a master's degree in security studies from the Naval Postgraduate School, and I did a thesis on this sort of thing. This classification system needs to be revamped. Oftentimes, people in the intelligence division will just label something classified, not because it has national security information or secrets, but because they're trying to hide the behavior that they're involved in. And that's why I said from time to time, we need to see this stuff because we get to weigh in, we the people, and we need to know what our government officials are doing so that we can determine whether or not we approve of it. So when I hear these deep staters say, oh, it's going to threaten national security, no, they're afraid of that their questionable behavior, criminal behavior, corrupt behavior is going to be exposed.
Sheriff Clarke, isn't there a bit of duplicity here with the Democrats talking about how terrible this is to let this information out? I mean, should the American people want to know that if you are able to eavesdrop on someone and get a warrant for surveillance, tapping their phone, following them, tapping their cars and all this stuff, don't you think the American people would want to know if that was legitimate or not?
Sure, and oftentimes, that happens afterwards. There are some elements of a search warrant and a wiretap where they have to let the person know after they're done with their investigation that they did it. But at the same time, you're right. See, there's no adversarial process in this. When you go to get a search warrant, when an officer, don't forget, I did this for 40 years. When you go to get a search warrant, you go in with an affidavit. You swear. You go in with a prosecutor, and they swear you to the affidavit. Do you swear that the information contained in this affidavit is true and correct? So help you God. You have to say, I do. So that's under oath. If there's false information and you swore that it was true, or stuff that you should have known, you are subject to perjury. And let's see if some of that happens here. And that's one of the things, John, that has frustrated the American people, is that all through this thing, there were people engaged in behavior that was criminal, that was at least suspiciously criminal, meaning could have been, and nobody's under investigation, nobody's been indicted. So that's the thing that's most frustrating, is these people aren't being held accountable. They can get away with stuff you and I could never get away with, and that's the arrogance, if you will, and that's why they did this. I hear people say, why would they do this? Because they thought they could.
If you can, Sheriff Clarke, when you say that there could have been illegality here, Just walk us through one scenario of that, because I just want our listeners to be clear.
Sure. This dossier, right? This fake dossier, Christopher Steele.
Right.
The FBI knew. They stopped using Steele because he wasn't reliable anymore. They knew that this thing was paid for by the Democrat Party. They had all this information. I bet that's not in the affidavit. Maybe it is. We'll find out when it's released. But if they use a document that had not been verified, and I heard Peter Strzok, I think it was Strzok, might have been McCabe, one of them said, no, we didn't verify it. Or I'm sorry, they said, yeah, we did not verify the information in a dossier. That's unbelievable. As a law enforcement officer, that is unbelievable. When you get information, you have to vet it. You have to vet its truthfulness. You have to vet its reliability. And they knew that came from Steele. They shouldn't have touched it. So that's just one example. They go to the FISA court then. And again, remember, this is not an adversarial process where they go in and say, hey, we think person A is doing X. And there's nobody there to say, well, wait a minute. I represent person X, and I want to see more information. That doesn't happen. That comes later. That comes at the end when you try to get the evidence thrown out, but it's too late by then. So the process is very one-sided, and because it's very one-sided, and we're talking about constitutional rights that are being taken away and they're being trampled on, America's constitutional rights, these courts and these judges have to be very careful. These prosecutors that go in there with the law enforcement agent have to be very careful. One of the things that I questioned early on, I said, what was the FISA court judge doing? Just sleeping through this thing? Was he just accepting this stuff, blanketly accepting it as true? He didn't poke around? Because I'll tell you what, when that judge heard that they wanted a wiretap, not only of Carter Page, but also the one to spy into the Trump campaign, the hair on the back of his or her neck should have stood up, and they should have said, wait, what? You want what? And should have asked some more questions. So if they just rubber stamped, and that's the thing, that's a problem too with this process of search warrants and wiretaps. It's basically a rubber stamp. You go in, hey, we need this, crime's been committed, national security is at risk, okay, where do I sign? And they stamp it and away they go. This whole process, I hope, if anything else out of this, I'd like to see some people held accountable. I'd like to see some people criminally indicted in the FBI, in the Justice Department, nothing else. I hope that our Congress realizes these agencies have to be stripped down from top to bottom and rebuilt, not just moving some deck chairs around, not by moving McCabe over into or Strzok into the Human Resources Department, and not letting these people retire with these great pensions.
Right.
I want to see this. I want to see a thorough house cleaning.
Well, I think you're onto something, and this is why I believe the Democrats are so afraid of this document coming out, this simple FISA application coming out. We are with Sheriff David Clarke. He's a former sheriff of Milwaukee County, and he is also a senior advisor to America First policies. So, Sheriff Clarke, the first time that the Department of Justice went to this FISA judge asking for surveillance, asking for a wiretap on Carter Page, the first time they went in a non-adversarial position, the FISA judge rejected it, right? That's what we just found out, that he rejected it. He or she, we don't know who, said, no, you don't have enough information. But the judge said, I'll leave the door open if you come back with more. So then what they come back with is the Steele dossier, footnoted, we think, at the bottom, without, as you say, explaining exactly where they got this information. And then they back it up with somebody does an article on a blog, Yahoo News. So is it possible this FISA judge just got duped? Could that be possible here?
Sure, it could be. And that judge ought to be ticked off that he was bamboozled by these people. But, when he rejected it the first time, I don't know that I'd let people come back. All right? We don't do that with juries. Once the jury is seated, double jeopardy kicks in even before the testimony starts once they're sworn in. When a verdict is rendered, even if new information comes to light, we don't let people get a do-over. I don't think you should get a do-over. You got to have your ducks in a row the first time, and you should only get one chance at this, short of some extenuating circumstances. But when that judge said, left the door open, what they did, obviously, is they went back and huddled and got some more garbage to put into this affidavit to get this warrant. They were that determined. So, one of the things that I learned as I studied this thing, these judges admit, these FISA judges, there have been some who are no longer on the FISA court, and so they've come out, they've written, and they speak at college campuses and whatnot, law schools. One of the things they admitted, they said, we don't know enough about the intelligence process to be able to ask the right questions. They admit that. Mm-hmm. They're not intelligence officers, so they don't know how this stuff is put together. They don't know the intelligence process, the analyzation, the collection, and all this stuff. And if you don't know what questions to ask, you are susceptible to just having to go with what you hear. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the FBI and members of the Justice Department were bamboozling this guy or woman, like you said. And they should be very upset with that. But their hands are tied right now, too, because everything is secret. That's another thing. There's just too many secrets. All right? And like I said, these secrets aren't to protect, are not secrets that we want kept from our enemies. These are secrets these people want kept from the American people. But the FISA system, it's steeped in so much secrecy that it's very hard. It's very hard for the American people to know what's going on. We don't need to know top secret information, we the people. We don't need to know everything, but from time to time, some of this stuff should be declassified. That's what I said, what I meant, John, when I said this classification system got to be revamped. There should be a time frame, and there isn't right now, where stuff is classified. Some stuff will be declassified over time, but that's at somebody's decision. There should be a time frame that, okay, we're going to let you classify this report for 90 days. And if you don't come up with a better reason that you are classifying this today, we're declassifying it. But nobody's going through this information, all this stuff that's classified, to make that determination. I mean, there's been stuff that's been classified for like 30, 35 years. Why? What's the threat after 30, 35 years? And I don't mean releasing names and stuff, but, there's a way to do this. Mm-hmm. Because the Justice Department will have to do it now that the Commander-in-Chief has ordered the declassification. They'll go through it, and they'll have to redact some things. There's a way to do it, but like I said, most of the time this is done just to protect their behavior from the American people.
Well, I think, when you're spying on people, and look, everyone knows it for a long time. I was opposed to the Patriot Act, the son of the Patriot Act, the cousin of the Patriot Act. I was opposed to them all, and this is part of why I was opposed to it. But you start spying on American citizens and trampling on our Constitution, you better have a good reason for that. I don't care what campaign they're with. And I tell you, Sheriff Clarke, I would have the same position if this was President Hillary Clinton and the same thing had happened and it was somebody that volunteered for her campaign. Because this is bigger than just what part, you like Trump or you don't like Trump or you're Democrat or Republican. This is like bigger than that. That's why I'm shocked that Mark Warner and other Democrats have come out blasting this process. I would have thought Mark Warner from Virginia would have said, as the ranking member on Intel, look, we need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to see how this went down. And if it's the right way, then that needs to get put out there so people have confidence in the Department of Justice and the whole FISA court process. If it was done in a way that was sneaky and deceitful in order to do it for partisan political reasons, then the American people should be aware of that also. Instead, they're blasting the process. That whole thing stinks. I'm troubled by the fact that Dr. Ford, rather than taking Chairman Grassley's invitation to come and testify in any format that she felt comfortable, private or public, instead now they're stalling again with a FBI investigation that can't happen because there's nothing to investigate. What do you make of this?
Oh, this is a political ambush. Okay, this is a political hit job against Brett Kavanaugh. These are unserious accusations. These are vague allegations that can never be proven. Brett Kavanaugh will never get a fair shot at this again because he's not going to get to cross-examine, or she's going to get up there and lay out these vague accusations, and he's not going to be able to cross-examine. Now, I understand it's not a court of law, but gosh darn it, when you're going to make this type of smear against somebody, they deserve the right to be able to poke holes in this, whatever testimony she gives, if she testifies, and to scrutinize it and look deep inside this thing. But there isn't a person on that Senate Judiciary Committee, a GOP a male senator, that's going to aggressively go after to poke holes in her story. And Judge Kavanaugh deserves that. They need to act as the cross-examiner here, but they won't out of sensitivity. They don't want to get labeled, oh, you're insensitive to a sexual assault victim and all that kind of thing. So this is a public flogging of a great man, and I'm very upset that Chuck Grassley doesn't push a little more forcefully. Look, okay, we're going to give her a chance. Okay, you get till noon on Thursday to tell us, and then if you don't, you're done. She gets one shot at this. And I said in a tweet last night, Ms. Ford, it is put up or shut time. You're right. This is a stall tactic. That's all it is. And Grassley and Senate President Mitch
McConnell.
Oh, God, his last name.
McConnell.
Mitch McConnell should not allow this. They're playing right into the Democrats' hands on it.
We're out of time. I want to thank Sheriff David Clarke for being with us. Now you can follow Sheriff Clarke on Twitter. He's got a very active Twitter feed. It's very good, by the way, at Sheriff Clarke with an E. And he is the president of America's Sheriff, LLC. He's also a senior advisor to America First Action PAC and Policies. Senior advisor, America First Action Policies. Sheriff Clarke, thanks for being with us.